Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.
I'm Emily Hicks, and you're listening to the Elder Law Hour, where we're offering insights and solutions for today's seniors so you can age with confidence. This week, I saw a really good article about estate planning in elderlawanswers.com. And if you haven't visited that website, I would encourage you to take a look at it. It's got a wealth of knowledge about just, anything affecting seniors, all of the subjects that we talk about on the show, and it's elderlawanswers.com. And it says, as the holidays get underway, prompt your family members to start thinking about their future. And it encourages everyone to take this opportunity during the upcoming holidays to consider the following topics and questions. And the first one that it talks about is housing options. And the AARP reports that 77% of adults 50 and older want to age in place instead of moving into senior living. Yet remaining at home poses safety concerns for many families, according to the National Institute on Aging. Now, older adults may eventually need help with activities of daily living and household tasks, mobility, meals, healthcare, and transportation. And family members may be able to provide caregiving, or you may be able to explore in-home services, but others may choose assisted living. So the following questions can help you spark meaningful discussions between you and your aging loved ones. And the number one question that they pose is, where do they want to live? Do they want to live at home as they get older, or would they prefer to reside in a senior living community? Number two, if they would like to stay at home, is the home adaptable to any potential mobility difficulties that they may face down the road? Number three, what kind of additional support might they need? Number four, who will help with their activities of daily living, and who's going to help with the household chores, such as preparing meals and cutting the grass and cleaning and all of those fun things. The next section that it talks about is healthcare preferences, and health challenges often accompany aging. According to the National Council on Aging, 95% of adults 60 and older have at least one chronic condition. So, as the seventh leading cause of death worldwide, dementia affects many older adults, per the World Health Organization, and the National Institute of Health reports that 1 in 7 Americans age 71 and older have dementia. Older adults should think about and communicate their healthcare wishes with their families before an adverse health event occurs. The following questions can help families with these difficult discussions. Number one, do they have a power of attorney or a living will, or are they planning to create one? This is a big one for me. Number two, what would make life continue to be worthwhile for them if they were to become frail or ill or develop dementia? I think that's such a great question. Number three, would they want medical care to prolong their life if they have a terminal incurable illness? Number four, if they fell ill, would they prefer to pass away at home, in hospice, or in a medical setting? Then it goes on to discuss personal values, and having a clear picture of what someone would value most at the end of their life can really help you and your families provide support. Erik Erikson's stage theory of psychosocial development suggests that older adults living in line with their personal values may feel peace, wisdom, and acceptance. Physical and cognitive decline associated with aging can jeopardize your autonomy. This is why knowing your loved one's values and wishes can help you more effectively support their independence. They should have a plan in place for their end-of-life decisions so that if necessary, you or another surrogate decision maker can make the choices that reflect their wishes. And these questions present a good starting point. Number one, what does your loved one believe they will come to value most as they grow older? Number two, is religious and community involvement important to them? Number three, what do they define as a good life? Number four, what do they feel would be most essential to them in their final years? Number five, what kind of funeral or memorial service would they envision for themselves? And number six, Have they thought about passing certain sentimental items, such as photo albums and jewelry, to certain family members? I think these are all such wonderful questions to ask, and they really spark such meaningful conversations with you and your family. And I hope that's been helpful for you as we head into the holidays and have the opportunity to discuss sometimes difficult subjects with them, but certainly necessary as we get older. We've got a great show for you today. We are talking to Travis Dauchy about financial planning for long-term care. And then we have Jim Kowalski with Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, and Jim and I are going to be talking about the family law services that legal aid can help with. But first, Vicky Oakes, our St. Johns County Supervisor of Elections, is talking with us about the upcoming election dates and the changes in the laws for mail-in ballots and what you need to know to make sure that you get your vote in for the upcoming elections. So we will be right back. Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I am so excited to have a special guest with us today, Miss Vicky Oakes, who is the Supervisor of Elections for St. Johns County. Vicky, thank you so much for joining me.
Emily, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss some election issues with you today and to actually educate your listeners.
Well, we appreciate that so much because there is a lot of fear and anxiety around elections these days. I mean, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. But first, I want to start with you. So I'd love to know more about you and how you came to be in the position of Supervisor of Elections.
Okay, I started in the elections office in 1988, a little over 35 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was hired as the Assistant Supervisor of Elections, and I served for 23 years. The longtime Supervisor of Elections retired in the middle of her term, and I was appointed by then Governor Rick Scott in August of 2011. And I have been the supervisor since then, right now 12 years.
Well, it sounds like you know what you're doing if you've had all of that experience. That's wonderful because it's a really big job. You have a very large responsibility to just, you know, the voters and the citizens of St. Johns County.
It is, but my experience really helps me. I've done every job in the office except for IT, and they don't let me do that.
Yeah, I would stay away from that one too.
Yeah, for a reason.
That's a whole other fraud situation or you know, security situation for you, I'm sure. But what do you love about your job?
I love the people. I have a wonderful staff. Built a great team over the years. A lot of people don't know it, but your elections office is one of the smallest in the entire county. We have a total of 15 of us, including myself, full-time staff, and we grow to a staff of about 650 to roll out a successful election that includes part-time help that work in the office and then poll workers that are hired and trained that work during our elections at our early voting sites and our precincts on election day.
Wow, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of oversight, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And just when you think you have everything in exactly the way you want it, the law changes, the state legislature makes a few things a priority, which they have done some great things for us with election security over the last 2 or 3 years, made some changes to the way that our list maintenance is done. So we've been able to improve the accuracy of our voter rolls. So there are laws that are very helpful to us, and the perfect system doesn't exist, but with our legislative packages that we've been getting and our supervisors working together with our legislators, we're seeing improvements in our systems every year.
Well, that's great. It is important to keep, with the technology and everything that we have available to us, I could understand how daunting that is in a role like yours, because you want to use, you know, make use of technology as much as you can. But on the other hand, I think there's a comfort level with people that just are filling in a ballot, maybe with voting by mail. But let's talk about the state of Florida, and specifically with St. Johns County. And we've seen such a population growth in the past few years. I mean, it's been growing steadily, but the past few years has really, it's gone a little not haywire, but
explosion.
Explosion is the word I'm looking for. I'm like, it's gone a little crazy. So what kind of challenges does that present for you and your office?
Okay, so those directly affect my office. The more voters I have, obviously, the more polling places that I have to have and early voting sites and the availability of staff in the office to answer the phones when they call and to be able to process our voter registrations, our vote by mail applications. That's what part of that bringing on about 35 part-time help just for our office entails. Wow. So there's a lot tied into growth and us preparing as our county grows because we have to grow with it.
Yeah, and I could see how, for you, with St. Johns County being one of the fastest, I mean, we were talking a little bit about this before the show. In the 2020 census, you mentioned we were the second fastest growing county in Florida. I wonder what that looks like as of 2022 or 2023, but what a challenge for you because all of those people probably want to vote. So
yeah, that's right. They do. And in the 2020 election, what we saw was in that 1 year, we added 20,000 voters to our voter rolls, where in a normal year, it's typical 10 to 12,000.
Okay.
And we've been doing some list maintenance, so our numbers are down with the new laws. And I expect in 2024, we will see that again.
Well, let's talk about just an overall, voting and, how everyone can get access. Because a lot of our listeners may not be so mobile. So what are your tips for those who maybe can't make it to vote in person? How does the process work for them?
Okay, so I say voting's never been easier than it is today because any registered voter can request a ballot and vote by mail. Florida's a no excuse state. If you'd like to vote by mail, all you have to do is ask, but it's on you.
Okay.
You have to, and it's very easy. You can pick up the phone and call your elections office. We also have some great tools available on our website. You can go right on our website and request your vote by mail ballot.
And you have an actual person that answers your phone, right?
Yes, we do.
Part of that staff is actually will help you if you call in, right?
Yes,
that's great. We have a lot of elections coming up. So, do we have some good dates that we can give people for when to look out for what's coming up in the spring?
Absolutely. So you're right. We have 3 elections next year. We have the March 19th presidential preference primary election. That is where Florida is going to pick their nominee for the presidential candidate for both parties, who will receive the delegate votes at the convention.
Okay, so March 19th, that's the primary where you vote for if you're a registered Democrat or you're registered Republican or registered for whatever party you are registered for or independent. That's when you make that vote for the initial person that you want for your party, right?
Okay, so March election is specific for the parties. Only the major parties. So if you're registered Republican, you're going to receive a Republican ballot with the presidential candidates listed. If you are a registered Democrat, same thing. Okay. Democrat candidates for president. Voters with no party affiliation or minor political parties will not be involved in this election. Okay. Period.
Gotcha. So that's just if you're registered Democrat or Republican.
Yes. Major parties only. Now, people can choose to change their party if they want to. The deadline for that is February 20th. It's 29 days before an election.
Okay.
But whatever they are registered on that date, that is the ballot they will get and be eligible to vote on.
Okay. So March 19th. So you have roughly a month before that if you want to make sure that you're registered as in a major party if you want to change anything, right?
That's correct. And we don't have the names yet for those ballots. We don't know who the candidates will be. The parties will certify their candidates by November 30th, and then the state will certify to supervisors by December the 19th. Okay. So on December the 19th, we'll know presidential candidates for both major political parties that will be on the ballot in March.
Oh, that's coming up pretty soon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's talk about, so that's in the spring. And then moving on, we have, what other elections are coming up for us?
Okay. August 20th is our federal, state, and local primary elections.
Okay.
And then November 5th is the big general election.
All right. So that's the big one.
Yep, that's the big one. In our office, we call it the Super Bowl.
I can see that. Well, you know, I had a wonderful experience when I worked for Nassau County quite a few years ago. I worked in the county attorney's office, and I interacted a lot with the supervisor of elections. Luckily, she's a very lovely woman, and I had a great experience with that. But one thing I love about working for the county is how much you get to know people. I mean, you really get to know I got to know all the elected officials, mainly working with the Board of County Commissioners, but you really get to know the people of the county. And so it's a special job that you do, because I'm sure you get to interact with a lot of people, and a lot of people have a lot of questions these days with fraud and with everything that they see in the media. So could we just maybe talk a little bit about the safety and security of the election process?
Absolutely. The first thing about misinformation is that what you hear on the national news a lot of times has nothing to do with the way elections are conducted in Florida.
Right.
Florida is now the gold standard on the way we conduct our elections. And what that basically means is by election night, when we finish, all the results are in, unless there's a close race and a recount, we pretty much know who has won when we leave the office election night. And our laws allow Florida supervisors to open and count their vote by mail ballots ahead of time.
Okay.
That's what that's all about.
I gotcha. So I bet a lot of stuff changed after Bush v. Gore, you know, the big election back in 2000. That was so crazy.
Yes. Along came the Election Reform Act of 2021. It changed everything. It did away with the punch card systems. We all know hanging chads.
Oh my gosh. If I never hear hanging chads again, I think that would probably be a great thing for you too.
Yeah. But number one thing with our security is Florida votes on paper ballots. And St. Johns County voters have been on paper ballots since 1994. So when 2000 came along, we did not have a problem at all. All of Florida has been on paper ballots since 2008. So regardless of how you vote, whether it's vote by mail, whether you vote early or at your precinct on election day, you have a paper ballot that you vote, and it's an actual physical record of your vote. No way it to be tied back to you, but I don't care what anybody says. You cannot hack a paper ballot.
You certainly can't. Well, that's good. Thank you for clearing that up, because I know there's just so much out there in the media and so much misinformation for people. So if someone wants to find out more information about the upcoming election dates, or more information about your office and what all registering to vote and everything that they need to do to get in preparation for that, how can they find you?
Okay. The best thing is our website. We have some great tools on our website. That's votesjc.gov. And I'll say it again, votesjc.gov. And then they're always welcome to pick up the phone and call.
The old school way.
Yep, the old school way. So visit our website first. I know not everyone deals with computers, and pick up the phone and call. I'll be able to help you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here today, Vicki. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
And you've been listening to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. we will also link all of this information on elderlawhour.com. So head on over to our website to find more about Vicky Oakes and the St. Johns County Supervisor of Elections office and those upcoming election dates. We'll be right back.
This is Vicky Oakes, your St. Johns County Supervisor of Elections. The 2024 elections are coming. They will be here soon. Are you election ready? If not, and you need to be, you can visit our website at votesjc.gov. That's votesjc.gov, or contact our office at 904-823-2238. Make sure you are election ready.
Well, welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. And I am here with Travis Dauchy, who is a partner at Atlas Wealth Advisors. And he is an advisor for individuals and families and business owners and executives, and helps them with retirement planning, business succession planning, our favorite tax planning, which, I'm not getting into because, I'm terrible with taxes, and estate planning. So, Travis, one of the challenges that we have been facing, and I mention it all the time about how many people are, moving to Florida and how much of that demographic is elderly. But to layer on to that issue is the almost epidemic, that we have in this country of cognitive decline and diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and the long-term care that's required for those diseases, but also just from the relational aspect of it. A lot of what I do is helping people decide who will be in charge of them if they can't be in charge of themselves. Is kind of just like an easy way, to put that. And I know that you have the same struggles with your business because we're just seeing more and more, even at earlier ages, of cognitive decline, and it's really, really scary for us.
It is, and it's a, like you said, it's a building issue that's happening. We're seeing it more and more at younger ages. I've had people as early as in their 40s have early onset Alzheimer's issues, and they're incapable of taking care of themselves, potentially within a year or two. And a lot of times they don't even know the issue is starting. It is simply advancing to the point that somebody around them is very aware something is wrong until they work to get a diagnosis. So yeah, it affects everything that we do. Obviously, there's a massive cost that's associated with the care that's provided. It's not unusual for us to see long-term care type costs run $10,000 a month. I've seen high-end, north of $25,000 a month for full memory care, 24-hour care in some areas. Obviously, that can drain resources in a very, very fast way. So a lot of the work we're doing with those is trying to protect the family. It's those relationships. It's those people that you're trying to help. It's protecting all sides financially. It's having the correct insurances in place to deal with the unknown, because you could be completely healthy at an older age and nothing's on the horizon, no problems. It's the best time to set things up so that if there is a problem, it's all addressed.
Yes, please come see us at that point in time.
At the other day, I tell people this all the time. You want to have confidence in your plan. You want to have a plan that you have complete confidence in, that is going to work, and you want to be in a mental capacity standpoint to truly evaluate the strength of your plan and decide it's the one you want to go with. Stumbling into these things is in some cases catastrophic for the family. Sometimes all the assets get used up early in the care. And I'll give you an example of two spouses. If you've got the wife needs long-term care, has an early onset dementia type related issue, and you spend all the money on her care, what does the husband have left to pay the bills?
Exactly.
And there are steps, there are things you can do. You need to talk to us early.
Yes.
Because it snowballs very quickly against you. So Emily, I know you have a lot of experience in that area.
Yeah, that hits, that's a lot of people that I deal with, a married couple, for instance, I'm thinking of, they worked and worked and worked and saved for retirement, and they did everything right.
Yep.
And then he gets a diagnosis of dementia. And I mean, the bills are just astronomical. She actually took care of him at home as long as she could. But, one of the ugly sides of some of these diseases is with certain diseases, especially in men in particular, they can become quite violent. So, in that scenario, he became very unpredictable. He became a little bit violent, towards her. It really became an unsafe situation for her at home. And she did as much as she could for as long as she could and did a really great job taking care of him. But at a certain point, she's not a nurse, and she's also, in her late 70s. So, it's like, I mean, it's
a lot harder
just,
to move a person. Yeah.
it's hard for me, I mean, I couldn't imagine. So she did, I always tell her, I'm like, you did it as well as anyone could have done. Like you should be proud of how well you took care of him, because there's a lot of shame with having to put your spouse into a facility. And I totally understand that. We all want to, hold hands and die together at the same time. But, the reality is it's probably not going to happen like it does in the movies. So for her, what we really looked at was, okay, we have a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
She was perfectly healthy. We're like, she's going to live. I mean, who knows how much longer she's going to live? She's going to need that money for herself, and this money is draining out. So there is definitely, so many things, especially in Florida. I will say, with long-term care planning from a legal perspective, we have a lot of tools that we can use. So don't think, if you're out there thinking you're just going to have to drain all of your savings, your spouse isn't going to have anything left, your kids are going to be left with nothing. That's not always the case. There's a lot of things that we can do. So again, it's always, helpful to plan early, because if not, you're really going to be in crisis, and you're going to be in crisis mode, and we have a lot less options. There are still options for you. So I don't want you to be discouraged by that. There's always something we can do, but sooner the better.
I would agree. And it's with so many people moving to Florida, right? Florida is,
oh my gosh.
We've
always been a hot spot, but I mean,
so many more people are coming, and a lot of people do come here and retire here. And there are special advantages that Florida has for retirees that you don't get in other states. So that's a key. The issue becomes, you've had an entire life potentially in another state, in another location, with family around in a different capacity.
Yeah.
So that switch we've seen have a mental impact on decisioning people make. Is they were comfortable. It was working. They moved to make an improvement in their lives, potentially weather improvement, tax improvement, life improvement, all the good stuff. But when they landed, they didn't have a solid plan of estate planning, of powers of attorney, of really trusted contacts that were local that could help guide them through continued steps. And we've seen that a number of times with people moving. It doesn't have to be to Florida, but Florida is definitely a top destination where people move potentially in older years. They're in their 70s, 80s. When they land, their decisioning capacity is diminished quite a bit, and they will sometimes stumble and make a poor decision that is sometimes irreversible, that they just weren't given the advice, weren't given the information to make an informed decision. So, there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of resources to help, but you want to talk to a trusted advisor, talk to trusted people in your network. Don't wing it.
Don't wing it.
Do not wing it.
Please don't wing it.
And again, people that I've run into, they've worked hard their whole lives. They've saved, as you said, the people that did everything right, but sometimes they don't take that next step and say, let's continue to do everything right. Let's be proactive. And I see the biggest one coming from that cognitive decline. Do you have things like a power of attorney on hand? Is there somebody who can step in and make decisions for you so things don't slip? Bills don't get not paid.
Yeah, exactly. But, and also, talking about long-term planning specifically, not every power of attorney is created equally. Some of them I see quite often, they don't have basic language that we need for that type of planning. So, you really want to make sure that you have an attorney that perhaps understands elder law issues as well, because there's a lot of stuff in there that we use that perhaps someone that doesn't do elder law wouldn't use because that scenario doesn't come up for them. But the sad thing is we have it in place. And then once, the person is incapacitated or can no longer make, the decisions for themselves, it's too late. It's like you really got to get it while you're healthy and while, you can make those decisions for yourself, because there's a dark side to this. And the dark side is a lot of times, number one, it's incredibly difficult for someone like me to understand when someone is actually already in cognitive decline. Because if I have never met you, I obviously do not live with you. So I'm not going to, I have tests that I can do. And I have, we all have like our little tricks of the trade. But the truth of the matter is, if you're introducing me to this new friend of yours that's recently come on the scene, perhaps you've moved to Florida, you have this great new friend and you want to have him or her as power of attorney, that it's, usually I have a little tingle up my spine or, the red flags, appear. But honestly, it's really, that's the kind of stuff that I always look out for. I'm like, where did this person come from? Why are we nominating him for power of attorney?
Housekeepers have taken it all.
Absolutely. I see housekeepers a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
They will be in the will. And there's not anything wrong with that.
And that's the changing demographic. You've got a lot of people like we know is roughly half the people in this country are single. So you have people who don't have that support structure.
Yeah.
They are relying on whoever's around, the housekeeper's around. So that's who you're talking to, and that's how you're taking advice. And that may be fine, but that may not be what a 10-year-old or 10-year earlier version of yourself would have decided was a good plan.
Right.
You might have you got to start early on these things. Don't shortchange yourself by thinking I'll take care of this at a later point. It's only going to cost you.
Absolutely. Because you just never know, when that's going to hit. For my personal situation, which I tell people about all the time, because it was such a shock to us, my own mother got diagnosed with Parkinson's. Another thing that you have to understand is just for her to get a diagnosis took over a year. It took over a year. So the symptoms, when we look back on it, started occurring years before, but we didn't really put two and two together because, you're not expecting that. Number one, she, her symptoms appeared in her very early 60s. She died at 67. She died last year. And it did not take very long. Once she actually got the diagnosis, she died 2 years later. And it's, looking back on it, we think, God, we're so stupid. We didn't see, this sign. We didn't see that sign. But you really...
It's impossible when it's you. Can you imagine it's you has to make that call of, do I understand it? You don't know what you don't know.
You really don't know. She didn't know what was happening to her, So it's crazy how something like that really takes over. And it takes root so early and you don't know. And even, my dad didn't, like, they were living together. Even he didn't really know what was happening. You just, you really don't expect it. I know we hear about it all the time and we talk about it all the time. You still, until it happens to you, I mean, no one really expects to lose the functioning of decision making and things like that. And it can just leave you so vulnerable, not just to not have, planning in place or anything like that, but just it can leave you so vulnerable to so many issues. I mean, first of all, the online world that we have nowadays.
That's a bottomless pit potentially. Yeah, you can how many aliens are coming next week? I don't know. There's issues out there
it's crazy.
That can lead you down a path that harms your true objectives. Is you dwell and put energies into things that are not great. That I look at some of the cases I've worked through, specifically with Alzheimer's type work, and how the ones that had a plan, that had resources, that had this taken care of, it was still painful, but they could focus on the care, focus on at least making sure the person is comfortable. I have people that lived, they had Alzheimer's for more than a decade and didn't know where they were on the planet, but were happy. We're not, they got them in the right situation, right medications, right everything, that they were content in their situation.
Yeah.
I've had other ones where that was not the case, and you're trying to move families in together. Families are moving in where the medical needs are so far above the capabilities of the people that they're moving into, children, nieces, nephews, all down the line, who I think in a lot of ways are really trying to help, but end up being consumed by this process as well. And it's devastating to everybody. So definitely, while you're in the spot to make a clear, definitive decision, don't neglect this stuff. Don't take it lightly, because nobody wants to assume it's going to happen to them. So if you got a plan, you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And if you don't, everybody's got to worry about it.
Exactly. And, that's such a good point of mentioning the families, because, caregiving is just such a big issue for people and families nowadays. I mean, what we're seeing a lot of are maybe sons or daughters who are having to quit their jobs because mom needs help and she really needs full-time care. And, maybe we can't afford to get her full-time care. So people quit their job. And it's really unfortunate, because the ripple effect of that, that's affecting savings, retirement. I mean, all kinds of, it could really have, just such an effect of that you can't even really probably put together in your mind, but it can affect
every direction imaginable. It's, I guess the good news on it all is the medical capabilities we've come up with. Quite frankly, things that would have killed you a couple decades ago are treatable, are manageable, and they are doing so many things towards dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these, stroke care, all the things that, quite frankly, we're ending a process for people. They're able to manage a lot of those symptoms, and they're able to extend people's lives, and that is great. The cost is there's a care component that comes with all of these, and again, plans that were designed and written 20 years ago may not account for the realities of today in the opportunities that are out there. Again, to help out a family member, but do it smartly. And to, as the person who needs care, protecting spouses, protecting children, so this isn't a devastating financial hit to their situation, that they can survive past this and still be okay. Again, doing nothing is not an option anymore. You have to address these issues head on.
Absolutely. And, just the psychological effects of the changes in the family dynamic and the relationships. I mean, I think one of the things that makes it so difficult for people is when you go through one of those diseases, when you're living with that, you sort of become like a child again. And I think that's really hard for people to accept, is that you're going to become, maybe just not helpless completely, but, perhaps you will be, and you're going to need help with just the daily functions of life. And I think that's a very hard thing for us to wrap our minds around, but it's certainly something that if you don't plan, if you fail to plan, you certainly plan to fail. That's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. So
don't need to fail.
It's a cliche for a reason, right?
Yeah. It's all too common. It's too big of a percentage of people do not look at this, especially in Florida. I mean, a lot of these communities are built for retirement. They're built for care. They're designed for that. Even the individuals that are there don't have their plans in order.
Right.
That's a big concern to myself. I've got, between my wife and myself, there's aging parents who, we're looking at these things, and I've seen things with so many families over the years that you just can't. It's hard to express the pain that comes from this not planning. We've stressed it a couple times, but you got to get up. You got to get a piece. If it's not written down, it's not going to happen. And if you don't make that effort, everything you don't want to happen will happen.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
It's sad but true. I mean, you really have to take a hard look at reality and just do what you got to do. I mean, it's a tough world, but you can make it better by documenting your decisions while you can. So we obviously encourage you all to do that. And if you have any more questions, please contact me or Travis. How can they get in touch with you?
Easiest way, give me a call, 949-244-9568. Again, my phone number, 949-244-9568. And my email is tdauchy, TDAUCHY, @atlas, ATLASPWA.com. Look forward to talking to you.
And thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful. I think hopefully we've encouraged you to assert yourself, go out there, get a plan, help take care of your family, look out for your future self, because if you don't do it, you're really leaving it into others' hands. And I know you don't want to do that. So Travis, thank you so much. We will also put his details on elderlawhour.com. This has been Emily Hicks with Elder Law Hour, and we'll be right back.
Are you ready to invest in real estate without the headaches? Look no further than investjacksonville.com, your trusted partner in turnkey real estate investments. With over 18 years of experience, our process has been fine-tuned. And now we're opening up our team to other people just like you. At investjacksonville.com, we're selective about who we work with because we believe in delivering the best. Our dedicated acquisition team scours the market to find the finest properties, while our skilled construction and maintenance team ensures every detail is taken care of. From new roofs to granite countertops, HVAC systems to plumbing and electrical, we leave no stone unturned to make sure there's no surprises. We're in this together with our investors for the long haul. With our first-year guarantee, we put our money where our mouth is. We guarantee your rental rate for the first year, giving you time to build reserves and budget for any surprises that may come your way later. We believe in our construction team and our tenant placement team, which is why we offer this unbelievable guarantee. We're committed to your success and peace of mind. We're passionate about making it simple and easy and a no-brainer for others to get started investing, because we know what real estate can do for people to reach financial freedom. So if you're ready to invest with confidence, contact Invest Jacksonville today at 904-536-3000 or visit our website at investjacksonville.com. Let us show you why there's nobody quite like us. investjacksonville.com, your authentic partner in hassle-free real estate investing. Contact us now.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I'm so pleased to have Jim Kowalski here from Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. Jim is the president and CEO and a wealth of knowledge about all of the things going on legally in Jacksonville. So, Jim, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
I'm not sure about that promise you made, but I'm also happy to be here.
So I won't oversell you, but I think the world of what you guys do, because you offer such wonderful services to our community, and we're really, really grateful for that. Being on the other side of it, we think the world of what you guys do as lawyers in Jacksonville. So let's talk today a little bit about some things that families are going through. We're seeing divorce rates higher than ever. We're seeing a lot of divorces with seniors. The rate of gray divorce, as we call it, has increased as well for various reasons. When you go to legal aid, you're not getting into the divorce arena with folks, right? But you do handle it in certain circumstances. So let's talk about if someone has a domestic issue, how, and they need your help, how that works for them.
So typically our family law services come through one of two doors. Like I mentioned, a lot of times folks have to walk through a door to then get into sort of the broader range of services that we offer. So for domestic work, the two doors are domestic violence and veterans. So we do see it's the number one ask from our veteran community, actually, is family law. Oh. So if you walk through that door and you are a vet, then you open that door up to our other services. And then the second one, which is, not fortunate, is domestic violence. So if you are a crime victim, and we do a lot of work for crime victims that isn't domestic violence work specifically. I handled a case not long ago for a lady whose 3 adult children were killed, and she wanted to get into the apartment to get their belongings. And that was a case we handled where we were able to, in court, work with the apartment complex to get her access and get their belongings out. But if you come in through the domestic violence door, typically that starts with an injunction for protection, and then all of the other civil issues that client may have, we would also look at. So to go back to financial abuse, for example, financial abuse is something we see in the domestic abuse context, where the abuser is taking advantage financially as well, opening credit cards that the victim doesn't know are out there. Those come back later. We handle that piece.
Oh, wow.
Damaging credit. The victim doesn't know that's going on. We'll work on that piece. So there's a whole section of financial abuse that we also see in the domestic abuse context. And then we also handle property issues that arise out of it, right? You may end up in a foreclosure because typically the victim is wanting to stay in the home and the abuser doesn't want to sign off on the paperwork that allows the person to stay in the home. And so sometimes we have to force the bank to accept the paperwork from the victim who's staying in the home and work within the family law context for that. So the door opens to a big room, but if you walk in as a crime victim, we can handle that. And then what we started a number of years ago, recognizing that almost no legal aid in Florida does general family law. We're one of only 3 states with 0 state funding. So there's some things we just don't do.
So I'm sorry, we're one of 3 states in the country that doesn't have any funding for this. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. Wow.
Yes, it's not a good, it's not the right side of the 47-3.
Sure.
That you would want to be at. But so what we created was something called FLAIR, Family Law at Reduced Expense, what we refer to as low bono, where folks can pay a reduced cost and they're placed with a private lawyer who will handle the general family law case. And then we stay in the middle, sort of monitoring that process. We assist with the preparation of documents, for example, which helps the private lawyer hit that lower price point. And so that has been very successful. We have a number of private practice family law lawyers who agree to take case referrals from our FLAIR program for folks who will be paying less than they would. And it is income qualified. So it's trying to hit that sort of 400% and below that we think are the folks who can't afford a lawyer at all.
Yeah.
Trying to hit that window. So if you're above that, you won't qualify for those reduced services. But if you're below that, it may help you reach a lawyer where you would otherwise be handling your family law case completely on your own.
Yeah. And that actually hits quite a bit of our population. We were talking before the show about how to qualify for legal aid. So let's walk someone through, that process as far as it's income based, correct? And then you have this additional kind of population that you can help with the reduced fee legal services. So how does one qualify for those programs?
So typically when somebody applies, most of them are income qualified. If you're a vet, it's relaxed. If you're a senior, it's relaxed. If you're a domestic violence victim, it's relaxed, for example. But typically what we'll do is we'll ask some financial questions of you when you apply. We'll figure out what assets you have. If you have a second home, for example, that's probably disqualifying because that would be an asset that you could bring to bear on your issue. But we'll go through that process. It's fairly basic. Our intake staff are pros at it. And then if you do qualify under any of the doors that we have open, your case will go to the substantive unit. And so it'll be reviewed. For example, if it's housing, it'll be reviewed by our housing unit. If it deals with debt, reverse mortgages, even though that's technically housing, it'll go to our consumer unit. If it's domestic violence, it'll go to our DV unit, and then they'll handle it from there after it's been qualified through our intake staff.
And so switching gear, thank you for that. Switching gears back to domestic violence just for a moment. I mentioned to you before the show about my brief stint in working in domestic violence, and I learned a lot. I was a young law student and did an internship while I was up in New York. And this was not a very pretty part of New York. This wasn't like, the kind that you see on movies. This was a not so nice area of New York that was quite rough. And that's where our clinic was. And I remember the first time I had a hearing and I had to do it myself, and my supervising attorney had gotten called away on an emergency. And so there I was, trying to get a temporary restraining order for this client that I'd met, 5 minutes ago. And we got it, luckily. And the husband appeared, and quite frequently the other side is not on, they don't appear in court to represent themselves. But of course, in this particular circumstance, he did appear, and he was there, and he didn't speak great English, but he was very intimidating to me. And as we all left and we got on the elevator, and of course he comes on the elevator with us and, walks directly up to my face. And I think, oh my gosh, I've really done it now. And, he basically just asked me how a restraining order works. And then I just kind of went through that process. I could breathe a big sigh of relief, but I learned a lot during that time with domestic violence and just how it really is a cycle. And just, I think people have such a misconception about how victims really get sucked into that situation. They, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she leave? And it's not so simple. And you can speak to this as well, Jim, because you see this on a daily basis. But what you see is the isolation that happens from the beginning. And so perhaps the victim is isolated from family and friends, and maybe even financially. I mean, is that kind of the beginning stages that would you agree?
I think that's exactly it. And that's typically, to go back to the financial issue, that's what we look out for. In particular, sometimes you have a single mom. We don't have great access to childcare in this state. We don't help people who need to get to work.
It's incredibly expensive.
And you've got to go to work, and you've got to have your child in a place that's hopefully safe for them. So that creates another incentive for an abuser to be, in that case, the male who's home, who's not working, becomes the chief caregiver, can control not just the victim, but her children. A lot of this is what we look for. And I think we talked about it with seniors, but trying to keep folks from being so isolated, and then forming a team around them when they do decide to reach out, so that they know they can go to Hubbard House or Quigley House or Betty Griffin in St. John's. And then we can handle that piece. We work very closely with law enforcement, with the state attorney's office. I think there's an understanding that you've got to have this sort of holistic team that carries the victim from where she's at to where she and her children need to be down the road. We could be doing more. You know, like I said, Florida is not great for some of these pinch points that place people. Childcare is a huge one. And then, you know, you speak to what you went through. I know we work very hard, for example, to make sure that our family law lawyers, our domestic violence lawyers themselves have pieces in place. They meet very collaboratively as a group. The leadership in that unit is very good at making sure that her folks are looking out for their mental health as they're working with folks sometimes at the worst times of their lives.
Yeah, I mentioned to you, and I'm not ashamed to say it, that I cried my eyes out, you know, some nights when I went home. I mean, we had victims that were murdered. It was incredibly sad, and you felt like you're working to be part of the solution. But, you know, the reality of it is, in that moment in time, after people work with us or with, you know, you guys to get those temporary restraining orders, that's the most dangerous time for someone, right? I mean, that's really where you need to have, like you said, the holistic approach and the team come into play, because that is the most dangerous time for these people. And that was, and those were the moments when we had two very different victims in my situation. One was a young mother. She had 3 young kids. It was her boyfriend. And the other was a doctor's wife. You know, so you really never know. This isn't something that only affects certain types of people or certain type of, you know, the population. It's everyone, right?
Right. And I think you mentioned this a little while ago, but, you know, if you see it at work, if you're in a work setting or a family setting, don't ask the question, why doesn't she leave? Ask the question, is there something I can do to help? Because it may make that difference between somebody feeling like they're trapped and isolated and somebody feeling like, oh, I may have a way to this next stage that I really need to get to, primarily for my kids. You know, we would see when I first moved to Jacksonville, I was a prosecutor. I worked for the state attorney's office, and we would just see this constantly, where there would be an arrest for domestic violence and the victim would file a drop affidavit saying that she lied to the police. And invariably it was something where we saw there was a financial imbalance, where there was a child involved, where she needed the income, she needed the child care. And at some point, we've just got to learn from these lessons that our DV shelters tell us about. Look at child care, look at a little more support for our moms, so that we can keep them away from the financial abuse that often starts this process.
Right. And, you know, keep everyone safe. And also, you know, when the children are exposed to that, you're then furthering that cycle, right? I mean, that's, you know, that's the really sad part about it too, is that those are learned behaviors, unfortunately, in many instances. But Jim, thank you for the work that you guys do. If someone needs your help, how do they get in touch with you guys?
The easiest way is the website, jaxlegalaid.org. It's a mobile-friendly website, so it's easy to read and access on a phone. We wanted to make sure that folks could get to the different categories and see the videos and the other services that we offer on a mobile device as well as a desktop. Or they can call us, 356-8371. We have 3 physical offices. Our main office in Jacksonville downtown. We have a Clay County office in the courthouse. And then we have our St. John's office across from the School for the Deaf and the Blind. And then in Nassau County, we get space from the Nassau County Council on Aging, which provides space for us and helps us coordinate, in particular, intake for our seniors up there. So it's easy to get to us. It's easy to apply. easy to look at our resources. We try to make sure that it's all accessible.
Yes, and the website, there's a wealth of knowledge on there. So I encourage you to go to the website, jaxlegalaid.org, and check it out. And we will also be giving you a link to their website and more information about today's show on elderlawhour.com. You've been listening to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. Thank you so much to Jim Kowalski with Jacksonville Legal Aid. And we will be right back.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Elder Law Hour. If you'd like to connect with me or find out more about today's episode, please visit us at elderlawhour.com. I'm Emily Hicks, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Elder Law Hour with Emily.